Power Lunch, we're trying to put lawmakers on the spot. What would they do to help address it? Now live from Capitol Hill, Representative John Yarmuth, a Kentucky Democrat, with his solution. Congressman Yarmuth, welcome. Good to have you here. This is a problem that we created for ourselves and uniquely have the ability, unlike the crisis in Europe, unlike a weakening economy in China, to fix ourselves. Yet we don't seem able to do it. What would you do?
Well, first of all, I'd realize and admit that what we did was fabricate a crisis. I mean, I'm going to stop hyperventilating. We manufactured this crisis. There's no reason to do it. And basically, I voted against the Budget Control Act last year because I knew this was kind of a fiasco. I knew the super committee was not going to come up with a balanced approach, and we would be stuck in this situation. So, you know, to me, it's quite simple. We just head off these cuts for the next couple of years. It's ironic that my Republican friends who want to cut everything time after time after time, and then now when we're actually faced with a cut, they say, oh, it's going to hurt the economy. Well, yeah, we've been saying that. It's going to hurt the economy. So let's not do it in the short term. And on the other side, I think they've got to give up this crazy pledge to Grover Norquist, whoever he is, and realize that there are two sides to the income statement, two sides to the balance sheet, and we have to deal with both of them if we're going to try to find a reasonable path to a more sustainable deficit.
Could you find yourself ultimately, what I'm hearing you say is that what you think we need to do immediately is postpone the spending cuts, and that
Absolutely.
What you would favor in terms of a solution to the intractable fiscal mess we find ourselves in is the so-called balanced solution that includes some additional revenue. Specifically, what sort of mix would you go for of spending cuts and revenue enhancements? And could you ultimately find yourself, Congressman Yarmuth, on the side of the Simpson-Bowles plan that was the so-called grand bargain?
I've always thought that was the framework that we ought to be considering. We should never have taken it off the table. Our leadership did it, as well as Republicans, and we shouldn't have done that. I think it does propose a reasonable starting point to talk about what we do to handle long-term challenges, our entitlement programs and so forth, as well as our short-term needs to make sure we don't have the economy relapse into recession.
Is there the political will, do you think there is or will be after the election, the political will and the political leadership to solve something that you yourself say is totally in our hands to solve?
I may be a Pollyanna, but I actually believe after the election things are going to get better. I really hope we don't try to deal with this before the election because it's just going to frustrate the electorate. It's just going to make, I think, members on both sides more intransigent. So I think we ought to wait till after the election. There'll be pressure on us then to actually deal with the Bush tax cuts. I think that's the most important thing we have to deal with. But, most every economist across the spectrum has said, if you cut $100 billion or $200 billion out of the economy over the next couple of years, it's going to be disastrous. It's going to be millions of jobs. And I personally am not concerned whether it comes out of the defense sector or the non-defense sector. I don't want to see our housing industry retarded at all because of these cuts. I don't want to see our research efforts stifled. I don't want to see...
Is $100 billion, I mean, I don't mean to sound silly here. Is $100 billion really that much money in a federal government budget that is, what, $3+ trillion a year, and in an economy that's somewhere approaching $15 trillion a year? Are we really talking about that much pain?
Well, again, they say every $1 billion, particularly in the infrastructure area, is 30,000 jobs. So if you're talking about 30,000 times 100, that's an awful lot of jobs at stake, even though that's not an exact formula. But in some of the agencies, for instance, if you're talking about the FBI or the FAA, where the budgets are very personnel heavy, if you actually impose a cut of 8%, or it's actually be more than that because you're a partial year, you're going to have a huge amount of layoffs in those agencies.
All right. Congressman Yarmuth, thank you for your help today. We appreciate it, and may your Pollyanna sentiments prevail, please. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right. Let's go now to Brian.